Hello, class 6 students. How are you all? So I hope all of you are absolutely fine. So why has Prerna ma'am come today again? Because we are going to be studying chapter number 3 from your social science textbook. So we are going to be studying the history chapter number 3 from your textbook. All right. So in our previous class, I hope you remember, which I'm sure you do. So in our previous class, we studied about understanding the evolution of man through different stone age, wherein we talked about 3 main stone age: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. So when we talked about the Paleolithic age, we discussed that how man lived a nomadic life. And what exactly is a nomadic life? It is when you do not have a fixed place of settlement. When a man moves from one place to another, probably in search of, let's say, food or maybe of shelter or some other purpose. That's a nomadic life when you do not have a fixed settlement, fixed place of settlement. Then and he was a hunter-gatherer. So in order to feed himself, man used to hunt animals or maybe take something from the trees, from nature. And what kind of stones did he build? That these were macrolith. Macro meaning big and lith meaning stone. So tools were made out of big stones. Now, when man moved from the Paleolithic age to the Mesolithic age, there was some change in his occupation. What was this change? That from only being a hunter-gatherer, he started a different occupation, which was that of farming. So Mesolithic was sort of mixed of hunter-gathering as well as farming. But in the third stage, third stone age, which we call as the Neolithic stone age, what exactly happened? Man now was not a hunter-gatherer at all, and he took up one major occupation. What was it? That this was farming. So from a complete hunter-gatherer, he changed into more or less like a farmer. So agriculture became the main occupation. And as we discussed in the previous class, that in our country, in India, agriculture still remains as the main occupation. So imagine something that started centuries ago, it still prevails in India. So now what happened that man, because now he started having knowledge about nature in terms of plantation, maybe he did that discovery on his own, or maybe he did some experiments. So all of this we don't know. Why don't we know about it? Do you remember the reason? Because we do not have any written records of this age of prehistory when the Stone Age actually happened. So we still don't know how man learned this farming occupation, but we know for sure that he did learn this through archaeological evidences, through the tools that were found during excavations. So in the Neolithic age, as I told you, that man started farming and he started growing a lot of crops. So he started growing wheat, millets. So all these crops he started growing. Now, man started understanding how nature behaves, and things like that a plant or a tree or a seed, it takes some amount of time to sprout, correct? So man wanted food for self-consumption, obviously. So he, in order to take care of those seeds before they blossom into beautiful plant or a tree, he knew that he had to stay at that particular place where he was sowing the seeds. Now, because he had to take care of those seeds, he became more civilized in terms of his settlement. So no more nomadic life, but more of a settled life. That is staying at one place for a very long time. Now, the most beautiful part of your book is that if you look at all the chapters, they are all interconnected. So like in the first chapter, we studied about knowing about history, and then we studied about the various. In the second chapter, we learned a brief about the prehistory period and how this Stone Age led to civilization. So all the chapters you will see, interconnected. That's the most beautiful part about your book. All right. Now, we talked about civilization, that is man being at a particular place. But does that really means civilization? So, when you're making a lot of noise in the class, what happens? Ma'am, she generally, she would ask the entire class, are you all civilized or not? Why? Because we behave like hunter-gatherers at that time, barbaric. We don't even know how we are behaving. But that should not happen. So civilization basically means when a person is at a particular place, and second, they are living harmoniously together. That is called as being civilized. So now, another thing that happened, or another change that occurred from the Stone Age to the civilization period, was that man started living in large groups, and it was more or less of a harmonious relationship. So how did this civilization happen? How did these settlements actually occur? And where did these settlements occur? This is exactly what we are going to be studying in the following chapters. All right. So chapter number 3, what is the name of the chapter? It is Indus Valley Civilization, which is on page number 19 in the book. Right. So I've told you exactly what civilization is, and now let us do one thing. Let us understand from your book what civilization is. Okay, so it says the word civilization means an organized culture of many communities or a people or of a nation. It is to raise people from a primitive stage to an advanced and ordered stage of development in politics, society, and culture. So basically, as I told you, living in a group in an organized manner, a proper law and order being there, that is called as civilization. All right. Now, we have already discussed and how man moved from the nomadic life to a settled life, and Neolithic age grew into towns and cities. So till now, man was probably staying in forests, in caves, but now there was building of or the emergence of towns and cities between the period of 4000 BC to 600 BC. This is the period when the first civilizations came into existence in the world. So the first civilization came. And in the previous class, I told you, how do you remember dates? Like, to understand, you have to also understand or learn the formulas or the concepts or the theories in science. In social science and history, what do? You make a table and you write all the important details and paste it on your study table. So from 4000 BC to 600 BC, we see the emergence of towns and cities and a settled human life. But what was this first settlement that ever came into existence? Correct? So this was the river valley civilizations. Now, under this river valley civilizations were many civilizations. So man mainly settled near rivers. Why? Because what was the main occupation? Agriculture, correct? And because agriculture was the main occupation, now man knew that water was something that he really needed in abundance. So where would he get water in abundance from? From the rivers or from the water bodies. So he knew that this water from rivers was, this was a constant source of water for agriculture, and the soil on their banks was highly fertile due to recurrent floods. Besides, the rivers were an easy mode of travel by boats and rafts. So if they had to go maybe from one place to another, so basically waterways was used. So that is the reason that river valley civilization was the first of its kind. So these were the 4 main river valley civilization. First, we talked about the Egyptian civilization, which was near the river Nile. Then the Mesopotamian civilization, which was on the valleys of Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And then you have the Harappan civilization, which was near the Indus Valley or on the banks of river Indus and its tributaries. So we all know that any river has its tributaries. So there's a main river, and from that main river, many small rivers also flow. These small rivers are called as tributaries. And then you have the Chinese civilization, which was on the Yangtze River and the Huanghe River or the Yellow River. Okay, so the 4 major civilizations, river civilization: Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Harappan, and the Chinese. And in this class, in today's class, as I already told you, we're going to be reading chapter number 3, which is about Indus Valley Civilization, or it is also called as the Harappan Civilization. Now you see, this is the flow of river Indus, starting from Himalayan mountains and moving towards a bit of Jammu and Kashmir, and then flowing down towards now in the areas of Pakistan and some Gujarat and all these areas. So it is flowing mainly towards the western side, emerging from the north and then moving towards the western side. This is the flow of river Indus. Okay. So now we start reading about the Harappan civilization. How do we come to know about the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization? So geographical footprints. So about 250, remember this number, 250 such sites have been discovered in present day Pakistan and parts of northern and western India. So why did I show you this map? Because these are the areas itself where the Indus Valley, the sites of Indus Valley civilization, some evidences that Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization existed here is found on these routes only, northern and then the western part of the country and in present day Pakistan and some states of western India, western part of India as well. Okay. Then Indus Valley civilization was the longest among the ancient civilization. Please don't get confused. A lot of students get confused. I am not saying that Indus River was the longest. We are saying that the Indus civilization was the longest. Then two main Indus cities were Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, and more we study about Harappa, and that is why we also called it as the Harappan civilization. They were unearthed, that is, they were found during an excavation in the early 1920s, which is in present-day Pakistan. The Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harappan civilization, as Harappa, was the first city to be unearthed. So when the archaeologists, when they were performing an excavation, the first city or the evidences of the first city that they found was Harappa, and that is why they call it as the Harappan civilization. Now, these are some major Harappan sites. So as I told you, in 1920s, this excavation started. So if you see, river Indus has the tributaries. So Ravi, Satluj, all these are more or less the tributaries. So Harappa is the city. And where is it? In what provinces? Pakistan, present day Pakistan, Punjab. Mohenjo-daro in Sindh, and the Indian Punjab. Roped is found in Indian Punjab. Lothal. So these are the list of all the major Harappan sites. And I'll repeat that once again. And what you can do is you can make a table out of it. And this is the years of discovery. So imagine we just said that 250 sites of the Harappan civilization were found, and these are just a few. And these are the years of discovery. So started around 1920s and till about so many years, even till 1974, we are able to see this. And these are the archaeologists who actually were a part of this project or who leaded this project of excavation. Okay. Now we come to know about, or we going to study about Harappan city. So we say that if you remember, I just told you that now from the nomadic life, man, or from the Neolithic age, now man was not really living in forest. Rather, the cities and towns came into existence. So town or a city, it has to be planned. So it cannot be like you can lay the road anywhere. Often you would have seen me complain, oh, you know what, the speed breaker outside my society is not properly built. So it's badly constructed. Or sometimes we say, oh, you know what, the drainage system is really bad in our city. Whenever it rains, oh my God, it seems that the state or the city or the town is going to be submerged under water. We often complain, or probably we have heard people complaining about these things. Why? Because the city or the town or the state as such have to have a proper architectural plan. Now, what is it, or why is that we study about the Harappan civilization, the planning, the architecture? Because it was still date, even in today's date, if you have any architects, any of your family member who's an architect, or any of your friend, someone in the known who's an architect. So if you talk to them, they will say that, when they started pursuing this course in architecture, even they were taught about the architecture or the planning of the Harappan cities. Why? Because it was so finely made. The Harappan cities was so finely planned that even today it is being taught to in architecture. So what was so beautiful about the Harappan city architecture or the planning is what we are going to study now. So, and at that point of time, so many years back, we call it as advanced architecture. Why? Something we say, this is very advanced because it is way beyond time. It is something that probably someone did not imagine, but it has already been done. So that is being advanced. So many centuries back, the people of Harappa or the planners of Harappa had facilities like dockyards, granaries, large baths, flat roof brick houses, warehouses, and protective walls. So imagine, so many centuries back, the planners of Harappa decided to have things like granaries, proper brick houses, warehouses. Why? Because they understood the importance of storing something which is in excess. So sometimes, we say, oh, there's a storeroom, you can put these extra things into the storeroom. What is the advantage of having a storeroom? The advantage of having a storeroom is that probably whatever is extra, you keep it there for the time being. So that maybe your house doesn't look bad. So people of Harappa had separate storerooms, or, even things like granaries where excess of grain was stored. So imagine this concept of storage having or conceiving this idea of storing something in excess was in the mind of Harappan city planners. Then the cities were well planned. They were laid out in grid-like formation. And then there were broad roads and streets. So not like narrow streets, broad streets. So people could travel easily. So people did not have cars at that time, but maybe they have chariots. Maybe they had chariots at that time, or maybe they had cars. So they knew that a cart would require a lot of space to move through the lanes. And that is why they decided to have broad roads, and these roads, they ran parallel to each other and cut at right angles. So you can say a kind of square was made. And then streets rounded at the corners for easy turning of the cars. So this is what I'm talking about, the beauty of Harappan architecture planning, that they were rounded. So whenever a vehicle is turning, so a vehicle doesn't turn like this. So can a vehicle turn like this straight? No, it has to have that round movement, correct? All those who know how to ride a bicycle or probably a scooty would know this. So you turn like this, a U kind of a formation or an arc. And this is exactly how the corners of the Harappan city were built. And then they had a citadel, which was probably the upper part of the city, and a lower town. So let's just have a quick recap about the citadel. Okay. So when I talk about the citadel, we are going to understand. So citadel was basically, an elevated part. So the city was divided into two parts, upper part and in the west, and was a fortress type area called the citadel. So the upper part. So maybe, so we just assume that maybe people who were very influential, they lived at this part, and the lower city was surrounded by the citadel, probably for protection of the entire area. So see how well they have planned everything. All right. Now, another thing about Harappan city planning was the Great Bath. Citadel in Mohenjo-daro had a large rectangular tank called the Great Bath. So this Great Bath was there in Mohenjo-daro, and the tank with 6 entrances resembled a large swimming pool. And we assume that this was probably used maybe for some religious purpose or maybe for some entertainment purpose. So it was like a large swimming pool also that they built at Mohenjo-daro. And maybe, it's just an assumption, maybe it was also used, that some water can be here, which people can use if the need arises. Then, as I already told you, storehouses for grain, the granaries, indicate careful planning and a strong central government. This is a granary which was found at the Harappan site. Then houses. How were the houses built in the Harappan civilization? They were flat roof, generally a duplex structure. So what is a duplex house? So when you have probably a multi-story house, but the entrance of each floor is from within the house. So you don't have to go out to go to the first or the second floor. The entrance is from, or the staircase is from within the house. That was a duplex kind of structure was there in the Harappan house. So probably they built big houses. And these walls, they were made from baked bricks of uniform size, wood and stone. And then there was a kitchen, there was a courtyard, there was a washroom, and a well also. So you see all these provisions. So if you, again, talking about the beauty of the Harappan civilization. So even the Harappan city planners were aware of having different rooms for different purposes. So if I tell you to go and cook food in your room, would you do that? You would not like it. So the Harappan city planners at that point of time understood the importance of having different rooms. So a kitchen for cooking food, a washroom for bathing, a well if you have to draw water from it. So different rooms, different purposes. And houses opened only to inner courtyards and small lanes. And another beauty of the Harappan houses was that they were very well ventilated. There was cross ventilation. Then sanitation and drainage, very, very important. So Harappan city planners also were concerned or also understood the importance of health. How? How do we say that? Because if you look at their sanitation and drainage pattern, so it was an advanced drainage system. Houses either had individual wells or they obtained water from public wells. And the Harappan houses had separate rooms with sloping floors for bathing and washing. Now understand this. So in the washroom, so let's say this is the area, let's say this is the area where one had to bathe. So this is the surface. So the surface was something like this. And at the end was a drain, which was, this drain was outside the house on the outside lanes. So what's going to happen? So this is my phone. Obviously, I can't show you. But okay, so assuming that this is water. Now, let's say that this is water. So this is the surface. And what is happening now? The water is easily flowing into the drain. So in the washrooms, such kind of surfaces were there. All right. Wastewater from these rooms, as I told you, it was directed to covered drains which lined in the major streets. And I told you that they were concerned about the health also. So the drains were covered. So that, we see even today, we see the fear of malaria or dengue. Why? They say that, if there is stagnant water, the malaria mosquito or the dengue mosquito is likely to be there. So they had covered drains so that the wastewater does not lead to any kind of diseases. And then we talk about the social life. So as we discussed that in the Paleolithic, it was a hunter-gatherer, Mesolithic and Neolithic moving to agriculture. Now, the Harappan cities, they also had a social life. Why? Because people started living in groups, into communities. So there was a class of learned people. And how do we know? The burst of priests. There were warriors because there were swords and all these things, or weapons which we got during archaeological excavations. There were traders and artisans, artifacts were found, and farmers and laborers, the quarter of laborers. So these were the main classes. So priest, warrior, tradesmen, and farmers. And how was the religious life like? So remember, we studied that in the early Stone Age, man worshipped all elements of nature. Earth, moon, sun, because there was also fear of natural disaster. So he prayed, he worshipped all of these. What about the people of the Harappan civilization? So there's not really any evidence of kings or rulers, but some historians believe that the Harappan cities were governed by committees. So maybe a group of people which was influential or which was very wise. And no temples have been discovered from the Harappan sites. However, the excavated clay seals and figurines suggest that the Harappans worshipped a mother goddess as a symbol of fertility. Now, what was the economy like? Remember, we studied about the barter system in the Stone Age, domestication of animals. So this grew now at a large scale during the emergence of towns and cities. So what happened? So people primarily depended on agriculture for their livelihood because they lived in the highly fertile land of the Indus Valley. And they grew crops like wheat, barley, cotton, millets, and sesame. The Harappans, they also domesticated animals. So for extracting honey, milk, eggs, all these things. So they domesticated animals, and the Harappans had trade contact Now, so many centuries back. Now we talk about trade happening. Correct? Oh, you know, we are able to do trade with the world across. But imagine, even the Harappans were doing trade with Mesopotamia, with Persia, with Afghanistan. So the global trade existed even then, even during the Harappan civilization. And how do we know it? Because there are seals discovered of foreign countries in the Indus Valley and vice versa. So Harappan seals were found in Persia, in Afghanistan, in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, all these places. And the seals from these areas were also found in the Harappan sites. We've just now seen the list of important Harappan sites. And the Indus people carried foreign trade through the dock or the dockyard at Lothal. And where is Lothal located today? In Ahmedabad district of Gujarat, western part of the country. Then we talk about the script and craftsmanship. So now we are talking about some written records. What was this? It was pictographic. So there was no language as such, but through probably certain symbols, man used to communicate something. So like you have emojis on your phone today, you see those emojis, smiling, angry, crying, angel. These are all emojis these are all emojis. So maybe some picture through symbols, basically, man communicated, or people of Harappan civilization communicated with each other. But even today, it is difficult to understand what those symbols signify. And of course, there was a lot of craftsmanship, because we talked about how metal was discovered, and you had copper, bronze, and iron that were used. And there were also craftsmen who made bronze and copper utensils and weapons. And have a look at this picture. This is a picture of a dancing girl, which was excavated from one of these sites from Mohenjo-daro, and it is there in the National Museum. Okay, so you see how beautifully this has been made. Now we talk about the decline of Indus Valley civilization. So obviously it prospered for many years, but certain factors led to its decline. What are the factors? And these are all assumptions. So we really don't know what was the exact reason, but there were certain reasons which were assumed that this could have led to the fall of Indus Valley or the Harappan civilization. First is climate changes. So maybe river dried up and they did not have any food to eat. And maybe river Indus, it changed its course, so it changed its direction of flow. Maybe there was a huge increase in population, and now the food was less. Maybe there were natural disasters like floods, or maybe there was an epidemic, but we really don't know the exact reason. So I hope all of you now have understood about Harappan civilization, and you have a complete clarity of it. I have just given you certain glimpse of it, but make sure that you watch this video very carefully and also read the chapter once again. And trust me, once you do perform the combination of these two, you will be easily able to answer all the questions that are given in your textbook. And we are meeting in the next class. Till then, be prepared and make sure you read the chapter and watch the video once again. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.